Welcome to Shareholders of a Better World, brought to you by TBLI Group. At TBLI Group, we have an established reputation as an organization dedicated to building the ecosystem of global sustainability and impact investing. We're doing this through educating, advising, and facilitating transactions in global sustainability and impact business, as well as capital solutions for private companies, family offices, and fund groups. For nearly 25 years, TBLI Group has created a vertically integrated ecosystem of education to action through TBLI conferences and TBLI consulting. More about our company can be found at tbligroup.com. This webinar is brought to you by TBLI Foundation, which hosts educational learning experiences dedicated to a better planet. Through the foundation, we build sustainable communities by sharing the people and the experiences making a difference to so many of our lives around the world. Our weekly podcasts bring impact thought leaders that are doing and not only chatting. Now let me introduce my guest today. Good afternoon from our studio in Amsterdam. Before I introduce our illustrious guest, Stefan Beiten, let me give you some update instructions on our system. The text messaging has been repaired so you can text to your heart's content. If you want to clap or find something funny or brilliant, there are 3 emojis at the lower right-hand corner, and the system will capture that. If you need to ask a question or a comment, type it in the lower right-hand corner or your lower left-hand corner. In either side, it says comments or questions. And if you need to ask a specific private question or a message to someone, just move your mouse or your cursor over their name and a window will pop up and you can send them a private message. If you have a burning question, it will be brilliant for everyone, and you are not selling a used car, type the microphone next to your name, and I'll get a request to join the panel. So today, I'm really happy because Stefan Beiten, all the way from Aspen, Colorado, lots of snow in spite of climate change, has agreed to explain to us what is CQ, IQ plus EQ equals CQ, and how he's upgrading the operating system of communication to create a more conscious focus of business. Stefan, thank you so much. For those who are from another planet, who never heard of you or who you are, what you do, please tell us your journey. I'll go on mute now.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's really fantastic. I've been following the TBLI events and podcasts for a while. It's always the insights are amazing, and I'm really honored to be part of this illustrious group of presenters and interviews. Well, to introduce myself, I'm calling from Aspen, Colorado, but I live between Amsterdam and Berlin. Originally, my academic background is history and law. My passion is entrepreneurship, and that led me to various industries and adventures throughout my life. And the most impactful one was producing Planet Earth together with the BBC. We had a joint venture with them in media outlet of mine for 15 years, and that created a personal experience that brought a connection with humanity, literally, and the planet, for me, to a different level. It was a paradigm shift. What we noticed, and that was not planned, that was not what we ever anticipated, that when we premiered, especially the movie worldwide, every single time, there were thousands of people, especially in public squares and cities throughout the world, and it changed the conversation. There was a different atmosphere, a different chemistry in the air, and it changed the conversation of how people saw themselves within one another and in relation to the planet. It changed the conversation. That is why we said, oh my God, conversation is, how can we take that to the next level? And that led me to another adventure, and I joined an international organization called YPO, and they had something at their core called Forum, and that's something I found fascinating. At the core was something where 8 people get into a room, and having usually pretty alpha entrepreneurial people that want to get stuff done and achieve results and be great achievers and basically make money, but they put them in a different environment, in a different process based on a psychology it's called Gestalt. And all of a sudden you had different conversations. And you went through, it was not about the outer journey anymore. It was about the inner journey, the inner dialogue, and how to have conversations that was not just what we call IQ based, transactional based, but emotional based. Really, what is the connecting points? What are the true drivers? What is not the what and the how we do, the IQ, the transactional level, but why is it truly driving us? And here I was, the kind of, I'm a German lawyer, son of a German lawyer, doesn't get more left brain than that. And I found myself in that environment talking about the why. Why was I actually doing those things? Including the bigger question is, what is actually the narrative that I'm born into? And am I following that narrative, or am I creating a new one? So now I was literally forced to connect the dots of the premiere of Planet Earth by changing. I think we reached over 1 billion people by now with that project, both the TV series and the movie. Why did that change the conversation on a deeper level, on the why level, on the emotional level? And how can that be connected with that small environment called Forum, with 8 people asking different questions, having a different conversation? And that's when I stumbled across that big myth of the Argonauts. And I must really give it to the Greeks. They figured a lot of things out 3,000 years ago that we're just, that we're still apprentices of in our on our high level technology mechanistic world, that we so perfected. But basically I feel like I'm an apprentice, and the people I know in rediscovering that inner journey, and that is where the myth of the Argonauts comes in. So it's in simple terms, it is Jason assembled 50 of the greatest mythological heroes. So they were all at the peak of their individual transactional hero's journey. But now they had to get on a boat to get the golden fleece, the metaphorical fulfillment in life. And now it was about not how good they were as individual heroes, but how can they become a group hero. And that thereby they had to change their operating system of how to interact with one another. And we actually know that from various examples, what that actually requires to go from an individual hero state to a group resonance state. We see that in sports. We see that in music. So there's a huge difference of being a single great musician a single musician on stage, or being in a band, or more in a symphonic orchestra, where everyone is a great musician, but the orchestra as such is a resonant band. So, and here we have the resonant body, and here we have the third element, the CQ, the collective intelligence. So the idea is to take the transactional IQ-based abilities that we have, merge it with a new ability through dialogue, through conversation, of seeking the inner world, of harmonizing it with our why, and thereby, in the combination, create a new collective intelligence. And that's where the journey has taken a full 360. Taking the Planet Earth experience, getting into a true new conversation with one another and the planet as a whole, together with that very special ingredients of the forum environment, the forum process, and creating a new collective intelligence that is what we call upgrading the human operating system. Or, in other words, we're providing the back end to the front end of ESG impact sustainability. Is that a fair description? or,
Well,
or
it's a start. It's a start. It unlocks some of my questions because there are many, many, many attempts to create new, impactful, engaging networks to achieve something. But often you have people that are active, which is a really small group, and everyone looks at it as a theater production. So I'm kind of leaning back. Okay, come on, Stefan, do your thing. How do you get this group of overachievers? Because you're going after C-suite individuals or people influentials to engage when they're overstretched to begin with.
That is precisely the core challenge, but not only of us, of everybody. And how do you get people from going from consuming and observing to an active role? We actually call it going from a passive state to the active state, from an R to an act. we created that. We created the system and the process for it. So it's not only enough to build another network. There's tons out there. What it needs is that to create a space of psychological safety, especially in organizations, that allow to rediscover the new conversation that is the driver to find that purpose to actually start acting. So if you, and let me give you that metaphor. Why is that so difficult in just adding another network or another initiative will not, from my point of view, do the trick. It is like as if you were taking your iPhone 13, which is, since the iPhone 1, a amazingly upgraded hardware. You have amazingly upgraded apps, any kind of solutions, but you would still be running it with the operating system 1.0. That would not allow the iPhone to act, to go into action. It would crash. And that's what we're seeing on a broad scale. We're seeing it in the loss of trust in the institutions on a societal level. We see it, of course, on the planetary level, but we're also seeing it now in the professional world, in the corporate level, where we see symptoms and phenomena like quiet quitting, resignation, people going in, even highest achievers going in and say, what am I actually doing here? And that is what I said before. It is not enough anymore to follow the what and the how. It is about finding a new why. Without a new why, there is no driver towards any new initiative, because the new initiative is basically achievement in at another level. No matter how good the intentions are, no matter how, or in my iPhone metaphor, how excellent the new app is, it will not run with an old operating system. And our old operating system is really old. I mean, it's not that old. It's 350, 400 years old. It goes basically back to the to Mills and Thomas Hobbes and of course most of all Descartes with his most mechanistic algorithm ever presented to mankind. I think, therefore I am. So to change that algorithm that is literally at the core of the DNA of our systems, of our societies, you need a new conversation, you need a new space for conversation, and you need, through that, find the new why, hence then upgrading the human operating system.
But that's quite a long-term project. It's dealing with individuals who are used to running things, and now they're, oh my God, Stephen is just making me rethink what the hell am I doing here. So some people might actually leave their job, You realize, hey, I'm in the wrong place. Stephen, you're
Right.
right. I'm in the wrong place. How do I get in the right place?
How do I find my own narrative, a narrative
Yeah,
that fits to my individual purpose? How do I align that purpose then with a purpose of the environment that I actually want to be in?
right.
And now we're exactly back to the core of what we're aiming to do is that we build that practical operating system that allows any organization to implement in their culture, to provide exactly those spaces of psychological safety, which Google found out is the core driver for also performing teams. So we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. It is actually even supporting the performance on basically the transactional performance of a company, while also adding the transformational fuel to the corporate culture.
But the people that join the Argonauts are the individuals. It's not the company that joins.
It is yes and. So the we have a what we call a journey for both the individuals, the new journey on their individual Argonaut or Argo ship that we're providing. That is a small vessel of psychological safety. And it allows them to bring that to their organizations as a team solution, to then have their teams um, organize themselves in those circles within the company. Mm-hmm. So it is as well an individual offering as a team offering for organizations. It's
they might not be ready. The team, the organization, and the person who joins Argonauts might just be an employee of the company, might not be the founder. It could be a listed company, and it could be an MD who's passing through. So how do you get the organization to embrace this? I could see an individual. I need a new tribe. Stephen, right. I think you got the tribe I need to hang out with. Mm-hmm. But I'm still with this other group over here, and they're the problem. I'm okay now.
It's basically finding the good old Pareto principle. There are a few principles that make it work. One, it all starts with the C or the CEO, ideally, or a decision maker for a culture transformation. And the higher at the top, the better it is. But it will not work in the classic, let's say, McKinsey mode, where here's a 300-page document. Hey, middle management, now go implement. That doesn't fly. Now, what you need to start with is ideally the one person or the one team that wants to drive that forward. But it needs a champion within the company that says, yes, I am the presenter of, I'm the torchbearer of that the new culture that I want to implement in the company. To be not just a shareholder-driven company, but a stakeholder, not just a dependent organization, but ideally going from the independent to the interdependent organization. And I will find through a phased approach that we develop, the Argonauts in the company. And they're usually between 15 and 20%. That is what adult development theory from Harvard actually empirically found out over the last 20, 30 years. It's an excellent base for finding basically the empirical base and the approach of how to find the right people within the company. For that, we developed a special assessment. So give me any population of any organization, we will find exactly those 15 to 20%. And interestingly, Robert, you said before, how can you actually activate those?
Yeah.
Because especially those are usually very lonely. They're lonely. They do not organize themselves in the groups because they don't have the environment. Because in a purely KPI-driven environment, you're forced to organize yourself around those practical, the transactional goals. That is organized. That's we're highly efficient in. But they are lonely on their search for a new why, which usually leads to exactly the negative results that we see in corporations, organizations worldwide, be it for profit or non-profit, even. Because that there is no space yet in organizations to provide that journey to your newfound purpose, the newfound narrative. There is no trust building space anymore because we lost the trust that the old approach is actually working, the operating system 1.0. Everybody feels it. Everybody knows that. Why is my iPhone? Why am I constantly crashing with the new realities? Why can't I deal with the complexities? So that is, in order to implement that in an organization, you offer the individual journey and the first team journey. That's step one. You go through that for 3 to 6 months. And then the first Argo ship, the sailors on that ship, on that, what we call the trust circles, the trust circle members, they then become champions within the organization. And we have that exactly phased out, how they find first through the assessment, they know exactly who to invite within the company. And then you create the next 6. And from there on, it is a journey within the company to find at least a 7% critical mass. It's basically applying the law of innovation and that classic bell curve to that phased approach, how to implement, how to create a new culture transformation within the company. So top down, first circle, then the next 6 to 8 circles, and then it gains speed. And once it reaches 7%, that's the minimum number to be successful with any given transformation in the company, be it from analog to digital, be it in a crisis situation, be it in an M&A situation. And no transformation will be successful unless you reach at least a minimum number of 7%. And from there, you go to ideally 15 to 20%, and that's really Pareto principle. Once you have that, the rest, the 80%, will always follow.
So this would not work in a mega multinational, which has, I don't know, 300,000, 500,000 employees to get to 7%. That's a huge number. Can this only work in a small to medium-sized enterprise?
That goes back to our purpose that we have. We're saying we're democratizing conscious leadership at scale. So the answer is yes, it works for any size company. Ideally, it has a critical mass of at least 500 to 1,000 people, because that allows that layered approach. But we've just implementing it in a startup with relatively young people in a highly performance-driven environment. But it creates exactly with just one circle. And that already had a huge impact on the culture of trust, even with an environment where the company is constantly pivoting. At the same time, we're implementing it in such a Fortune 500 company with not 300,000, but close to 100,000 people. And it goes exactly that approach. First, the decision maker that is currently changing the strategy of basically an iconic company coming from the classic engineering world, and he's changing that. He's changed the strategy drastically. Now the culture of the organization needs to follow. The people need to follow, and for that, the only way to provide that space of safety to feel where you can build that trust and align your purpose with that new purpose of the company, that is what the trust circle system is providing them for them, and it is scalable to the point that it allows to go to that critical mass of then 6,000 to 7,000 people in the company. that's the 7%.
Does it matter if it's a listed or non-listed company?
No, not at all. And well, in a listed company, you are very shareholder driven. That's our system. So it needs to show that it actually also provides for the bottom line in the transactional space. And it's actually phenomenal the data that is being produced by hundreds of studies over the last 10 years to show that purpose-driven companies are actually outperforming the market. And Ernst & Young found an astonishing number that purposeful companies beat the market by 42%. That's a number that not even the most transactional-driven CFO and board can ignore. And so it provides precisely for a better performance in the transactional world, while changing the culture to precisely to match with a new strategy of going from a dependent company, which most classic companies still are, to an independent to an interdependent company, and the operating system along with it.
And does it? You working? Correct me if I'm wrong. Mainly with Western companies. You're not working with any Asian companies.
Not yet. We have quite a few members from basically members from all over the world. Quite a few members from very performance-driven environments such as Singapore, and they find on that journey that it actually matches very deeply with traditional Asian values of the collective. So the collective intelligence that makes the Eastern world so unique and special that we've lost in our individual approach, actually it finds a common ground with that approach.
In a world of overabundance of fake, people obsessed with selfie, selfish, Gen Z, constantly making a photo and pretending that we're actually making things better, how do you develop a KPI for trust?
That's the next level.
Okay.
You're absolutely right. How do you measure? You can only measure it through constant assessments. So from a psychological perspective, that's actually really good measurable. Really, so that's possible. But as a KPI that creates a value on an accepted market value on the balance sheet, well, that also gets us to
or
the question.
Not even an intangible that, I mean, YPO professes that whoever you're dealing with in YPO, you can trust them. I'm sure that among the 25,000 members, there's some creeps who screwed somebody out of a deal somewhere, because it's hard to get 100% success rate in that. But I would be curious, trust is something that it's kind of hard to measure, but when it's there, when you meet someone. I mean, most of the people here in this group, in the list over here, I trust. Maybe one or two I don't know, but most of the people who come are quite trustworthy, which is, why we do this. But how do you do this in an organization which might not be so trusting? And you're trying to get through the importance of trust and purpose and all of this, but their target is financial return.
So psychologically, you can measure that very precisely. How is the culture changing from a non-trusting to a trusting organization? You need to constantly go through various assessments, but that's pretty solid. From a neurobiological perspective, that's really interesting. It's actually, there was a researcher already 20 years ago, Paul Zak, that started to measure the oxytocin level in the blood of non-trusting environments and the team members or employees of non-trusting and trusting organizations. And so if you really want to measure it with hard science, you can literally take the blood. But of course, that's just in a research lab environment. But the interesting fact is that's the big difference of it actually shows even in our biochemistry. If we're in either a stressful organization, of course, then we have all the stress hormones in the blood. But the decisive factor seems to be the oxytocin level, and that correlates directly with basically Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So, are we just in for our own safety? Are we in the constant deficiency mode, or are we getting into a growth mode? So basically, if you take a piece of paper and just draw a line, are we below that line in the deficiency world? And that is very measurable psychologically. Or are we now in a growth mindset? Are we going from a me state of mind? It's all about me. How can I protect my job? How can I get my bonus? How can I reach the KPIs? How do I not piss off people? Or can I go to a me level? That's exactly, am I the individual hero? Or can I go to a resonant, coherent group hero level? And again, that space does not exist to develop that in the normal corporate or organizational environment. It's not taught at business schools. That's originally the world that I came from, and that's precisely what is that space. That goes back to that experience with planet Earth. Give a new, when you create that space, which a captive environment like a big cinema is, and you give a new narrative, what planet Earth was. And now you reproduce that in a small environment, like our trust circles, and have it ongoing. And that's also what we found is a key. It's not yet another coaching. It's not yet another workshop. It needs the continuity, just like going to the gym. Just going to the gym over a weekend basically gets you a strained muscle. But if you go continuously, even if it's just for a half an hour twice a week, you will build muscle strength. And it's the same for our mental muscle. So that space needs to be provided, and it needs to be continuously implemented. So it becomes a new meaning-making layer for any organization.
How do you, question, before I take, there's a bunch of questions, but I want to ask one or two more. How do you choose? I mean, it's very possible that I found my tribe, but I've met so many people in the last 25, 30 years who are trying to reinvent themselves as to be the sustainable champion, but basically they're 300 kilos, put on a coat and say I'm sexy now and I'm totally committed to sustainability, when fundamentally they're just repackaging themselves with the same mindset as before. So how do you choose who's kosher, who should really be part of this? Because I would imagine not everybody passes muster after a while.
No, that is precisely what we developed an assessment for, that allows us to filter the people that are capable is the wrong word, but they are ready to get on the journey for that shift in their own personal operating system within a group of peers that also wants to do that. So you have the leverage effect of a group, and that within a guided, professionally facilitated environment, which the trust circles are.
Are you ever disappointed with some of these? Oh, wow, this could be a great opportunity because it's Google, or it's, I don't know, it's Zuckerberg is joining and we finally can get through to this nutcase. And they don't. You don't. Yeah. They just go back to their old behavior. They pass the lie detector test, which is what they learn how to pass the lie detector test, and they're not willing to commit.
That's constant. We're human. Hence, it's a journey, and we will also not become all of a sudden. Here, I'm in Aspen. What happened on my first day? I used to be a very avid skier. I basically grew up on a mountain in Bavaria. First day, I did not train for that because I believe, I just get on slopes, easy. I've done it all my life. Well, strained my knees. And so the last 3 days, I was basically spending time in the bed putting my knees up. And that is that's exactly what I thought. I can just add another app on my iPhone. I go within the old operating system, the old me, but my muscle was not fit. My system was not fit enough for the new task. So what you just said is for me, that metaphor is, I go full sustainable now. I go full impact, but I do that with the old operating system, basically the mechanistic thinking, the transactional thinking, the Descartes thinking. So basically, to use that, if I go from I think therefore I am, the old transaction me operating system, to I think and feel therefore we are, adaptation or alteration of Descartes, well, that then allows to live the what I now want to do, the new impact me, also live it internally. And then I have a match of that newfound inner narrative with the outer narrative that I'm putting on. And it's not just a mask or just a code.
Okay, I'm going to try to take some questions. Oh, for those who are not Yankee fans, I'm sorry, my poster for Mickey Mantle is behind me, and my George Carlin poster has not arrived yet, so you'll have to put up with that. I could take it down, but I'm just too lazy. Meg had a question.
I would have loved to see George Carlin. Just a movie
New
with
behaviors, as per Robert's question of how to engage people, begins with small actions, some building of commitment, public action, active action stronger than private actions. How do you build these commitments with actions?
The first thing is, we're calling that going from R to act. The trust circles are not just by themselves. They then become a combined community, and you only can go to the act, to action, to bring basically the newfound wisdom to action, when it's supported by various layers of peers. So first the peers of your own trust circle, and then the peers of the larger community, the combined trust circles, and then it needs to be supported by the culture of the organization that basically aligns then those individual purposes and values with the purpose and the values of the company, and bring it alive. And that can only be brought alive by concrete projects. So it goes that phased approach. It goes that it adds up from being just with your peers in a trust circle to stacking up trust circles to a critical mass, and that all of a sudden becomes then a community within the organization. It takes on impact projects that align with that newfound purpose of both the individuals and the group, and then it's always a question of critical mass. The one thing that will not work is if it's just one person and that says, I'm going to do this impact project, and basically now if I have the CFO giving me a budget, then becomes basically a philanthropic, it's endeavor that lives and dies with that one project. It's again the continuum supported by a critical mass of like-minded peers.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Danielle, maybe you could type this in the comment area. What was the name of the Harvard study that you mentioned that analyzed, what was it, the percentage of people you need to reach to get impact?
Oh, I'll provide the links. We have a whole a white paper for that with all the links.
That would be really helpful.
Yeah.
So Aaron wanted to know, in today's global multicultural business landscape, is it also important to have a high AQ, SQ, and CQ?
We believe that we've and we're actually seeing that we've come to the end of the old IQ only based operating system. So, and it's clear, I cannot. It basically goes back to the old Einstein saying that we produce our challenges with the old mindset, and we will not be able to find the solutions with the same mindset that created them. So, I mean, that's an overstretched, overused quote or metaphor, but we find it to be very true. And that's also why we're calling it democratizing conscious leadership. What is this conscious thing? I mean, that honestly, when I came across it for the first time, the Western academic in me was like, that's a bit too esoteric for me. But then I found the equivalent in the science world, which is in the psychology world, is called vertical development or adult development theory, which Harvard has been backing for, I think, 30 years now. Robert Keegan mostly, or Torbert, Susan Cook-Reuter, and they provided the empirical base for the for something that where we said, oh my God, this is really it. This is the more philosophical approach of consciousness actually connects with the psychological data. And we're just calling it, well, it is really upgrading our operating system. That's it, going from a 1.0 to a 2.0.
Carolyn, one of my favorite whistleblowers, who left one tribe to find another one. If you were starting a company, would the same flow apply, i.e., trust circle to champions to build a critical mass?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get. Could you say that?
If you were starting a company, would the same flow apply, i.e., trust circle to champions to build a critical mass?
I would say absolutely. I would actually start with, I would make it as important to have a place for psychological safety that allows even the smallest team to continuously check and develop their own purpose is aligned with the company's purpose. When you have that, it's actually the super fuel. It is creating a superpower within the organization, even though it is maybe a startup and it has huge pressures by the investors to constantly meet and over exceed the KPIs. But my question would be actually counter I would actually question, how could you possibly achieve the performance-driven KPIs if you have a complete disalignment on the emotional level? That everybody comes into the company with a different why, or it's just out there to get the paycheck. The true driver of also performance on the IQ in the transaction world is that my why I'm doing this is aligned with the what and the how, and that's independent of size. It's just a different way of implementing it and managing it, because usually small companies don't even have an HR department yet, so it's back to the founder to organize it and to basically have various hats on.
Greg wanted to know, where did you find that 42% performance number? I don't remember 42%, but maybe it's some variation of that.
I'm happy to share, or we have a full white paper on that. Great. With literally all links to all the studies. So that's a pretty solid number.
Is Aaron, our resident nerd, is neuroplasticity a key trait to always staying relevant on trend and maintaining healthy branches of the brain?
Well, you're asking the non-neurobiologist here in that discussion, but I'm quoting the work from a good friend of mine, Dr. Axel Bouchon, who was one of the first to correlate Maslow's hierarchy with the neurobiology of humans, and found that if the 6 human reward receptors are not harmonized, are not constantly stimulated, our neuroplasticity shrinks. Or in other words, if we do not harmonize them and nurture all 6, then our neuroplasticity cannot grow and not be as flexible as it could be. So that is precisely what the trust circles allow. It allows to build that space, not to be just in the lowers, the dopamine driven, the testosterone driven impulses, and then we basically, because that's exactly the system that we're in. We live in a system that is deficient by design from a biochemical perspective as well as psychological perspective. So we're not satisfying all 6 human needs, and we're not satisfying all 6 human reward receptors. That's precisely the challenge that we're in, and hence we're seeing all the depression numbers going through the roof, and everything from, and in the organizations, the phenomenon of what is the latest retention rates? I think they're now in Europe they're between 23 and 25%. No organization can be sustainable with those low retention numbers, and that is directly correlated with humans not being able to grow neuroplasticity. That's now a quote directly from Axel Bouchon's work and 20 years of comparing the data. So providing a space where it allows the individual human to nurture all the reward receptors within us, hence build neuroplasticity. That is the key to also creating a successful and continuously successful organization.
Meg asked, well, she didn't really ask, but she's stating, great, but building those first steps of action to even join a trust circle, how do you do that?
That goes back to, it always starts with the decision maker on the top. They're the ones that set the course. Which culture do you want to either implement or sustain in the organization? But in an answer to that, that's what we've developed, a very phased approach that goes step by step by step. What does not work is what I mentioned before. Hey, here's a new concept. Read that book and go implement. And by the way, here's an app. You have the budget for buying 100 coaching hours. But at the end, what I want our performers to perform better. And that doesn't work. It is that's where when the environment, when the culture of the company is disingenuous to the initiatives, when there's a gap, there is no alignment of purpose, and then you fall back into the same trap.
But the amount of retooling of the economy, forget about the non-corporate world, just you're focused on the corporate world. I don't think you're working with governments or cities or that. Mm-hmm. So the amount of work is beyond belief.
Right.
It's huge. How big is your organization to take on that task? How are you going to scale, when people say, hey, like Ghostbusters, who are we going to call? Stefan and the Argonauts.
Well, it's also, we do not believe in just building that only ourselves, a proprietary approach. This is to create a movement, and to become a standard approach of creating spaces for psychological trust in any given organization. So we believe that this approach is universally adaptable. It just takes a pioneer to bring it out first and create, as always, in any classic bell curve of the law of innovation, it takes the early pioneers, and that's what we present. But as having said that, the core underlying principle of forum has been in practice for over 40 years within organizations such as YPO or EO, or Entrepreneurs Organization. And a forum is being practiced by over, 30,000 CEOs worldwide within YPO, actually representing almost 12% of the GDP. So it is a very well-known and established principle. What we just did is we're taking the forum principles, very well established and tested, to the next level. We're democratizing it, professionalizing it, digitizing it. That allows the scalability that you asked for.
But everybody wants to come to the party, but very few people actually want to bring the chairs to help build the party.
Exactly.
So you're carrying all the stuff up the hill and the table and the chairs, and how can this audience that is listening live or taped help you?
It is. We're exactly in that phase now, going to scalability. We've built it, tested it, brought it to a level of build a special methodology that allows to and tested it with hundreds and thousands of members. So it is now exactly at that level where it can be implemented in organizations, and it starts with the team solution. So going from the individual journey that we've offered most of the time, now the team solution. Mm-hmm. And by the end of the year, we'll introduce the enterprise solution that then allows a company to basically have it as their meaning-making layer, the constant system of culture creation and culture transformation at the fingertip, and basically, yes, as also as an app solution on, and then the iPhone with the new operating system.
Well, what can we do to help you?
We would love to have introductions and create a group within TBLI to bring it out to your vast network, and to then start implementing it with about 10 forerunners to join as pioneers in this implementing that operating system in their organizations.
Okay, well, I can, definitely Carolyn can get the whole Shell organization totally on board with this with one phone call. I'm joking about that. And Isabel can get Xi Jinping and the whole Politburo moving on this story too. She's a journalist who runs China Dialogue. All right. So, but what we'll do, we're coming toward the end, and I'm very cognizant of your time. You got to get back on the slopes over there skiing, or put up your leg to
I'm still putting up my knees.
Okay. So you'll send me some information that I can share with everyone who's joined live, and those that weren't able to join. Let me just check that we've got all of the questions dealt with. Forgot one from Manuel Vexer, which is more of a posting of Reuters, and also Thomas, which is a Leonard Cohen song everybody knows.
Yes, I love that.
And so I want to thank you very much. I want to take a quick group selfie to actually prove we were working today, and just say wave to the camera. It will collect all of the photos of all you, and then I will send that out to everyone. Stephen, this has been a joy. You've been fantastic. Thank you so much for doing this incredibly heavy lifting. You're a better man than I, Gunga Din. I want to thank Sam, our producer, Crypto Genius, and Ramen Critic, Ricky, my absolute better half with no filter, Xi Jinping, our head of transparency and integrity, Vladimir Putin, our head of conflict resolution, Jeff Bezos, our human resources and full-text compliance leader, Elon Musk, our humility coach, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, a Nobel Prize nominee for stupidity. Stephen, thank you so much. This has been a joy. For those of you that are still staying with us. I'm going to do a short network kind of virtual happy hour where you'll be connected for a 5-minute video chat. So just stick around. Stephen, thank you so much. And if
Thank
there's
you.
anything that we can do to help you, you're more than welcome to stay if you want to just
Absolutely.
chill. Okay, I'm going to end the group selfie. Yes. And then we'll go right into the networking. So enjoy. Okay, this is done.